You think the problem is that you don't make enough money. But here's what nobody tells you. The real trap isn't your income. It's that every dollar you earn creates a new baseline you can't fall below. And once that baseline is set, you're not building wealth. You're just funding a more expensive version of the same life. Let me show you what I mean. Say you're making $60,000 a year. You cover rent, groceries, a car payment, some subscriptions, maybe a night out here and there. Your expenses settle around $4,500 a month. Then you get promoted. Now you're at $80,000. That's an extra $20,000 a year, about $1,300 a month after tax. You'd think that money would change everything, but 6 months later, your rent is $400 higher because you moved to a nicer place. You're spending $150 more on groceries because you shop at the better store now. You upgraded your car lease by $200. You added a gym membership, better internet, a few more streaming services. Your dining budget crept up because, well, you can afford it now. Suddenly your baseline is $5,200 a month. You're making more, but your optionality didn't increase. You just bought a more expensive cage. This is the invisible prison. Not debt, not a lack of financial literacy, not even poor planning. It's the psychological ratchet that prevents your lifestyle from ever going backward, which means every increase in income gets immediately absorbed into a higher cost structure. And once that structure is in place, you can't dismantle it without feeling like you're failing. Because to your brain, going from the $5,200 lifestyle back to the $4,500 lifestyle doesn't feel like optimization. It feels like loss. And loss hurts twice as much as an equivalent gain feels good. So you stay locked in. The numbers make this brutally clear. Let's say at $60,000 with $4,500 in monthly expenses, you were saving $500 a month. That's a 10% savings rate. Modest, but functional. At $80,000, if you had held your expenses flat at $4,500, you'd now be saving $1,800 a month. That's a 27% savings rate. That's the difference between retiring in your mid-60s and retiring in your early 50s. That's the difference between one income stream and three. But instead, you're saving $800 a month at the new income level. Your savings rate only went up to 12%. You increased your income by 33%, but your freedom increased by 20%. The rest vanished into baseline elevation. This is the gap where wealth dies. Here's the part that makes it worse. This process compounds in reverse. Every time your income goes up and your baseline follows it up, you're not just losing the current gap. You're losing the compounding value of that gap over time. That extra $1,000 a month you didn't save at age 30 isn't just $12,000 that year. At a 7% real return, that's $95,000 you won't have at age 60. Do that twice, with 2 promotions over a decade, and you've given up $250,000 of future optionality without ever noticing it left. You weren't robbed. You weren't unlucky. You just let your baseline drift upward at the same rate as your income, and the math did the rest. Now you might be thinking, but I deserve to enjoy the money I earn. What's the point of making more if I can't live better? And that's the trap talking. Because the question isn't whether you should live better. The question is, what does better actually mean? If better means a slightly nicer apartment and premium gas and organic blueberries, then sure, you're living better. But if better means waking up in 10 years with the option to take 6 months off, or switch careers without a pay cut, or work part-time, or say no to a job you hate, then no, you're not living better. You're living more expensively, and there's a difference. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice. 2 people, same age, same city, both earning $90,000 a year. Person A spends $6,000 a month. Person B spends $4,500. Person A saves $1,500 a month. Person B saves $3,000. Over 10 years, assuming a 7% return, Person A ends up with about $310,000. Person B ends up with about $620,000. That's double. Not because of a better job, a lucky investment, or a side hustle. Just because Person B refused to let their baseline rise. They kept the gap wide. And here's what that gap bought them. At year 10, Person B could stop working entirely and live off a 4% withdrawal rate at $24,800 a year. Not enough to maintain a $6,000 a month lifestyle, but more than enough to cover $4,500, which means Person B now has a choice. Person A does not. Person A has to keep working because their baseline won't allow anything else. Their lifestyle has become a liability that requires continuous income to service. Person B's lifestyle is an asset that their capital can cover. That's the difference between looking comfortable and being free. And this doesn't just apply to high earners. It applies at every level. If you make $50,000 and spend $3,800 a month, you're in the same structural trap as someone making $150,000 and spending $11,000. The absolute numbers are different, but the system is identical. You've built a life that requires your current income to sustain itself, which means you have no margin for error, no room to take risk, and no ability to deploy capital toward anything that might break you out of the cycle. You're not poor, you're just operating at 95% utilization, and anything running that hot will eventually fail. The really insidious part is that this trap is socially reinforced. Everyone around you is doing the same thing. You get a raise, you move to a better neighborhood. You get a bonus, you buy a better car. You hit a milestone, you upgrade your vacation. It's not reckless, it's normal. But normal is a terrible financial strategy because normal means your income and expenses are perfectly correlated. And when two variables move in lockstep, there's no gap. No gap means no leverage. No leverage means no compounding. No compounding means you're trading time for money in a 1-to-1 ratio for your entire working life. And the only way out is to keep working until you physically can't anymore. Here's the framework that breaks it. Your baseline is not your identity. The amount you spend is not a reflection of your worth, your success, or your intelligence. It's just a number, and numbers can be controlled. The goal is not to minimize that number out of some performative frugality. The goal is to keep it intentionally flat while your income grows, so the gap between what you earn and what you spend widens over time. That gap is your freedom margin. It's the only part of your financial life that actually compounds into optionality. Let's get specific. If you're making $70,000 and spending $4,800 a month, your next raise should not increase your spending by a single dollar. Not your rent, not your car, not your food, not your entertainment, nothing. Let the entire raise flow into savings. If that raise is $10,000, that's an extra $650 a month after tax. If you were saving $1,000 before, you're now saving $650. Your savings rate just jumped from 17% to 28%. That's not deprivation. That's deployment of capital. And if you do that again with the next raise, and again with the one after that, your baseline stays locked while your income climbs, and the gap turns into a machine that generates options. This is what wealthy people understand that everyone else misses. Wealth is not about how much you make. It's about how much of what you make you get to keep and redeploy. A lawyer making $250,000 with $18,000 in monthly expenses is not wealthy. They're high income. They have a prestigious job and a nice house and a German car, but they're one bad year away from catastrophe because their baseline is so high that any disruption to income creates immediate crisis. Compare that to someone making $100,000 with $5,000 in monthly expenses and $1.2 million invested. That person is wealthy. They have optionality. They can work or not work. They can take risks or stay safe. They can say no without consequence. The lawyer cannot. The lawyer is trapped by their own baseline. And the worst part, the lawyer probably thinks they're winning because from the outside, they look successful. But success and freedom are not the same thing. Success is a signal. Freedom is a structure. And if your structure requires continuous income to remain intact, you don't have freedom. You have a dependency. So what does this mean for you? It means the next time your income increases, you have a choice. You can let it disappear into a higher baseline, or you can capture it and convert it into future optionality. You can buy a nicer couch, or you can buy 6 months of not having to care what your boss thinks. You can upgrade your kitchen, or you can upgrade your exit strategy. Both are valid, but only one of them compounds. The invisible prison isn't built with locks and bars. It's built with small, reasonable decisions that feel good in the moment and make sense in isolation, but add up to a life where you can't afford to stop, where your choices narrow instead of expand, where your income grows but your freedom doesn't. And the only way out is to see the mechanism clearly, refuse to let your baseline rise, and let the gap do what gaps do when you protect them. Turn into leverage, turn into compounding, turn into time. Your income will reset. Your savings rate won't. Protect the gap.